Hey, what's up, stock compounders? Brad here. So, a couple days ago, on the 31st of January, Elon Musk basically interrogated Vlad Tenev of Robinhood, one of the co-CEOs of Robinhood, on this Clubhouse kind of hangout that happened. It was just an insane event online, right? Mark Andreessen was there. There were a bunch of venture capital folks, and it was a really interesting just exchange. So I wanted to share kind of how that went, because there's some very interesting nuggets in there about what happened with the whole, GameStop fiasco from Robinhood's perspective. And then towards the end, I want to talk a little bit about how Robinhood actually makes money and what implications that has for retail investors who use that platform and other platforms who kind of utilize the same strategies to make money. So let's get into this back and forth between Elon and Vlad. Definitely check this out. I will link to it in the description. And it really starts at about an hour and 19 minutes. And it goes on for about 15 minutes. It's the last 15 minutes of this hour and a half episode. So I'm just going to kind of get into the transcript a little bit for you guys. So Elon asks, what happened last week? Why couldn't people buy GameStop shares? And then Vlad goes on to kind of talk about how Robinhood works, right? There's kind of three components of Robinhood. There's the introducing broker-dealer, which is Robinhood Financial. That's kind of the consumer-facing element. It's the app, the Robinhood app. And that processes trades, right? That's the first piece. The second piece is the clearing broker-dealer. Okay, that's called Robinhood Securities. Clears and settles the trades. All right, that's the second component. It's kind of the behind-the-scenes, trading aspect of Robinhood. And the third is Robinhood Crypto. Right, that's Robinhood's crypto business. You can buy a pretty large number of cryptocurrencies through Robinhood, and that's Robinhood Crypto. Now, these are three different entities. They're all differently operated, is what Vlad said about that. Now, getting into the details here, on Wednesday of last week, Robinhood had unprecedented volume, unprecedented load on the system. A lot of the meme stocks were going viral on social media, right? GameStop, AMC, and a number others, BlackBerry, Nokia, there were like a dozen of them that were going viral on, the Reddit message boards and other places on social media. People were joining Robinhood, and there was a lot of net buy activity. Okay, so there are all these new users downloading the Robinhood platform to try to get in on, this mania that was happening. A lot of net buy activity. So, most of them were there to buy, not to sell. Thursday morning at 3:30 a.m. Pacific time, the operations team at Robinhood received a file from the NSCC, which is the National Securities Clearing Corporation. They were requesting a deposit of $3 billion. Okay. Now, this is an order of magnitude larger than it typically is. So, that indicates to me, usually the NSCC is looking to collect on the order of $300 million when they send out. I don't know if this is quarterly or how it works, but they needed another $3 billion of capital from Robinhood based on the order flows that were coming through the platform. So the way this number is calculated, okay, that's something Elon asked, how is this number calculated? That seems like a dramatic increase without any real explanation. The way it's calculated is not fully transparent, right? So the NSCC, determines this number based on, whatever formulas they have. and they request this capital to be sent to the NSCC. Elon asked, did something shady go down here, right? We're all wondering. When Vlad has come on TV and kind of talked about the situation, you get a sense that they're kind of rote, memorized, lines that he's delivering. And, it's hard to really trust that he's being fully transparent with what actually happened. So Elon probes a little bit. He's like, well, did something shady go down? Vlad says, I wouldn't impute shadiness to it. It was unprecedented activity, and the NSCC was willing to work with us to lower the deposit amount. Okay, so initially they gave that $3 billion figure. Anyway, I'll get to that in a second. Elon asks, is anyone holding you hostage right now? Blink twice if yes. So a little humor thrown in by Elon. I couldn't tell if Vlad blinked. It was an audio segment, so there wasn't any video feed. So what Robinhood did, they called the higher-ups at the NSCC, to figure out how to work with them on this. They didn't have $3 billion to send to the NSCC, so they gave them a call. The NSCC lowered the deposit to $1.4 billion. From $3 billion down to $1.4 billion. I don't know what Robinhood said in order to get them to lower it to that amount, but that's pretty good negotiating. Down more than half. But Robinhood didn't have $1.4 billion either. So Robinhood proposed a way to manage risk with the meme stock symbols throughout the day. Right, that was the big concern from the NSCC. So they proposed marking these volatile stocks that were driving the activity position closing only. So Robinhood made that proposition. Basically, that means Robinhood users can't buy any more of those dozen meme stocks that were going crazy via social media. So you can't buy anymore, but you can still sell. So they closed down the buy side of this, of the order. The NSCC came back an hour before the market opened, and they said, we're going to lower your deposit to $700 million. So it sounds like Robinhood suggested that to try to get the NSCC to lower this required deposit of capital. And they did. They lowered it from $3 million, then to $3 billion, down to $1.4 billion, and then down to $700 million. Then Vlad said, we accepted the $700 million and promptly paid it, and everything was fine. It rings a little bit of a red flag there that Vlad said everything was fine. Sure, everything was fine, meaning the app stayed up, right? The NSCC didn't have to go in and shut it down. But it was obviously, there was an uproar, right? The whole Wall Street Bets community and everyone who was supporting them all of a sudden didn't have a way to exercise that support, right? Nobody could buy either the stock or the call options that were also driving this short squeeze. So, sure, everything was fine. It's easy for Vlad to say that, but clearly everything wasn't fine for a lot of users of Robinhood. Vlad says we had no choice. We had to conform to our regulatory capital requirements. Yeah, well, that's not entirely true because you proposed shutting down the buy side of the trade. And then they came back with this $700 million. Presumably there were other ways to approach this. So it tweaks me a little bit that Vlad is really shirking responsibility for how this unfolded. Basically saying, hey, my hands were tied. I don't completely agree with that. So Elon then asks, who controls this organization, this clearinghouse, right? The NSCC. Vlad says it's a consortium. it's not quite a government agency. I don't really know the details. Okay, he doesn't really know who makes up this consortium that is the NSCC. He also said, we had a lot of questions about restricting buying, but not restricting selling, right? They closed down one side of the trade. To which, Vlad responds, people get really pissed off if they're holding stock and they want to sell it, but they can't. It would have been categorically worse to restrict selling as well, okay? And that makes sense to me. It's just unfortunate that decision to only restrict buying really favored one side versus the other side, right? It favored these institutions who had these short positions in these meme stocks, and it penalized in a way, right? It was an impediment to these retail investors who were trying to squeeze those stocks. But he points out lots of other brokers were in the same situation, right? A lot of other brokers restricted buying activity, restricted buying potential for these meme stocks. But Robinhood was the focal point in the news. Robinhood was the one that took the brunt of the finger pointing around this issue of restricting buying activity. Elon then asks, what people are wondering is, did you sell your clients down the river? Or did you have no choice, right? And if you had no choice, we need to find out why you had no choice. And who are these people saying that you had no choice? Okay, it's a great question. Who is the NSCC? Who made this decision that, Robinhood, you need to put up $3 billion in order to keep the buy side open, right? That's basically like saying, look, you're going to have to shut down the buy side. It's functionally equivalent. So, we need to know who made that decision and what was behind that. To that, Vlad responds, the formula behind these requirements would ideally be more transparent so we could plan better around that, right? You can't really model certain situations unfolding, what capital requirements you're going to need, if you don't know how those capital requirements are calculated. So that lack of transparency is obviously a challenge for the management team at Robinhood and other retail brokers. 24 hours later, our team raised over $1 billion in capital so that when we open tomorrow morning, we'll be able to relax the stringent position limits that we put on these securities on Friday. So, this talk was done 2 days ago, which means it was done Sunday, okay? Sunday, January 31st. So here, Vlad was talking about Monday morning, right? He was hoping to really reduce these restriction limits on buying in these meme stocks. Now, I went in on Monday morning at Robinhood, and I looked, what are the restriction limits? And, I looked for GameStop, and the most you could buy of GameStop was one share, okay? One share of stock. You could buy up to 5 options on GameStop. So still incredibly restrictive, in my opinion. So I don't know, what raising over $1 billion in capital did to help those restrictions. Maybe that just hadn't moved to the NSCC yet to kind of raise these restriction or loosen the restrictions on what investors on Robinhood could buy. So that didn't really seem to come to pass. Elon asks, to what degree are you beholden to Citadel? If Citadel is unhappy, then what happens, right? That was a pretty bold question. Vlad says, there was a rumor that Citadel or other market makers pressured us into doing this. That's just false, right? So Vlad says that is just not true. Market makers execute our trades. They execute trades of every other broker-dealer. This was a clearinghouse decision, and it was based on capital requirements. From our perspective, Citadel and other market makers weren't involved in that. Okay, and the big issue here is that Citadel is linked to Melvin Capital and some of these institutional investors who were on the short side. So there's concerns about kind of collusion there between those parties. So then Elon asks, but wouldn't they have a strong say in who got put in charge of that organization, meaning the NSCC, since it's an industry consortium, not a government regulatory agency, right? So the question here is, well, wouldn't Citadel have some, sway in who gets to be on the decision-making position in the NSCC? Vlad says, I don't have any reason to believe that. I think then you're getting into the realm of conspiracy theories, okay? So Vlad shot that one down pretty quickly. So there it is, guys. Kind of the interrogation from Elon Musk of Vlad Tenev, co-CEO of Robinhood. I thought Elon made some really interesting points in this interview. And, there's going to be a lot of digging about what really happened from regulatory agencies in the coming weeks and months. So, I still have a Robinhood account. I'm disappointed in the way that Robinhood kind of came out and wasn't fully honest, in my opinion, didn't take full responsibility for the impact that this situation of having to shut down the buy side on a dozen securities had on their investors. So I'm disappointed about that. And it really brought up some questions. It brought up some questions. I'm considering switching over to another broker, but I haven't yet. I'm still kind of wanting to know more. And I'm curious how it impacted you guys. If how do you feel about Robinhood in light of what's transpired over the last couple of weeks? So, let me know in the comments. I'm very curious to hear from you. And definitely listen to this last 15 minutes or so of this interview. It's well worthwhile. And with that, guys, I will see you all in the next video. Take care.